Okay, there it goes. I guess now we're recording. So,
congratulations.
Alrighty, welcome everybody to Unwinding the Spool Podcast. Now, this is going to be a whole new facet of videos that go on the Not Automotive channel, but of course, these podcast episodes will be posted to all the popular podcast hosting sites such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and the many others that we will discover. But this podcast, as the name describes, is all about doing stuff like that makers love to do, whether it's 3D printing, CNCing, laser cutting, but mostly focused on 3D printing. But we're just going to have a lot of fun with this podcast. I am joined by one of my best friends, Will Amos, so we're just really excited. This is episode 0, so we're going to be figuring this out as we go here. We're trying a new recording studio, and this is not scripted. We have a general outline of points we want to talk about, but this is not scripted at all, so you might hear us hit a tongue twister, but we're just going to keep on trucking and basically just have a conversation with one another and talk about all sorts of cool things related to 3D printing and our experiences with it and the things that you can learn from our experience. And hopefully when we get to this point, we'll have some live guests on the show that are some way related and involved in the 3D printing world. So Will, do you want to get started on point 1 of the intro, kind of who you are, and then I'll talk about who I am and where we met and stuff like that.
Sure. So, hi, everyone. My name's Will Amos. I've been a longtime friend of Andrew Nat. He and I met our first year of college at UC Irvine. We were working on I think it was our first group project was the MATLAB course that we took. Yes. For those of you in the engineering world.
Good old Jasper Vrucht.
Jasper Vrucht of UC Irvine. Fantastic professor. That was where Andrew and I met, and we've been doing projects basically ever since, generally around such kind of crazy topics as Moose, can you not do that?
We're already getting disrupted here in episode 0.
We're already getting disrupted. There you go. So we met kind of in that class, and we've been doing all kinds of things. I've been working in 3D printing since 2015. I've been involved in all kinds of crazy projects, from making lights that can be powered by bicycles to go on a boat, to going up to the Arctic and taking pictures and time-lapsing in the Arctic. Andrew and I have worked on things like a go-kart and
yes.
Getting multiple vehicles to run and work. And it's been a really exciting thing.
Right, and if I'm not mistaken, you really started your big first kind of 3D printing project was the solar decathlon project, right?
That's correct. Yeah, that was kind of the first one.
A little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So I think that the first intro for me was for those of you that don't know, the solar decathlon is a house building competition where teams based out of different universities from around the world compete to make the best solar powered house. I was put on that team because I wanted to be. Andrew and I are environmental engineers, and I wanted to be on an environmentally friendly project, and I wanted to work on something like that. And when I went on the team, I decided they were like, well, the only thing we really need help with is the tool room of the future, the additive manufacturing room in the house. And at first it was a team of 10 people, and I was just kind of a second-year student going, hey, I don't know much, but I'm happy to help. The team quickly dwindled down to just me. And so then I had to take on kind of a leadership role. And I recruited some friends. I recruited the help of Aldrin, my current co-founder of Close the Plastics. I also recruited some other fantastic folks to help out. And we just kind of got the ball rolling there. And so we kind of helped create the tool room of the future, got some equipment, including a 3D printer donated to the space. From Airwolf 3D. One of the first 3D printers I used was a Dremel 3D20, one of the Dremel 3D printers.
Yep.
Heck yeah, Andrew remembers that guy. And so it's come full circle though now, Andrew, because I now have those in my classroom while teaching computer science. So it's coming full circle. But that was kind of my first experience, was just kind of positing that people would have 3D printers in their house.
Right. And you could use it as a solution to, uniquely and on unique, I guess, problems around the house, use 3D printing to make a new bracket for your vacuum cleaner. I don't know, you name it. People, it's functional 3D printing kind of per se, and also like artistic 3D printing for like vases and decor items too as well. So
absolutely. And we also, I remember in the house, so this is where we first posited the idea of recycling plastic waste into your 3D printing world. We didn't like do it. That wasn't where we were actually doing it, but we were like, you could maybe. Right. And so we had the idea was we had a surf fin that someone had broken. And so we put that, like, someone had a surf fin they broke. You could 3D print a new one and you could recycle the plastic right back into, and so that was kind of the idea. Definitely looking back on it, what is this now, 6 years later, it was more far-fetched than we imagined. And it took a lot more work to get that gap bridged, but, you know.
Usually that's how great ideas start, is you think something would be like, oh yeah, clear cut, and then you get into it and you're like, wow, this is, there's a lot more things to consider here.
That's definitely something that you and I have both experienced, especially I remember the go-kart build. I was like, this will take us, this is a weekend.
Yep. Well, looks like we lost your video for internet quality, but their video is still being recorded. So again, this is our kind of troubleshooting episode, and we're going to kind of work out the kinks as more episodes come out.
There you go.
I don't know if at some point maybe you can turn your video back on if your connection improves.
It looks, from my end, it looks fine. So I don't know what's going on.
Oh, okay. Okay. So, but it says it's still recording your video. So I think we should
Perfect.
be okay. But yeah, that was a great kind of intro. And then I'll kind of just talk about, before we get on to the next bullet point, my background and how Will and I met. As Will said, we met in our very first freshman class at UC Irvine. As he said, we were both studying environmental engineering. We took a MATLAB class together, and that's kind of where everything started. We got to know each other really well, hung out a bunch, studied for classes, till wee hours of the morning, and had lots of fun at 3 a.m. trying to study and remember things in very weird ways. But where I really got into 3D printing, which I tell everybody I would not be into 3D printing, at least, where I started without Will. He got me involved in the kind of the continuation of that solar decathlon project, where you really started to explore that possibility of taking waste plastic, recycling it, and extruding it in new filament. So I joined on, I believe, at the end of our junior year, and then definitely all throughout senior year for our senior design project that we did through what was called at the time the speculative prototyping lab, right? And that was fun. And that's where I learned all the bits and bobs of different 3D printers. I learned a little bit about the coding behind the printers, troubleshooting, because we ran a very large print farm together on a different project for a professor that we were working under, where we basically made 2,000 Lego cubes essentially that were magnetic. So we were running these little printer bots, for just 24/7 basically, and just
for months. Months.
And then all those parties of having to scrape the support material off and get them all glued together and everything. So I really got into 3D printing then, and I learned, very quickly how capable 3D printing is in all sorts of different industries, hobbies, professions. And for those that obviously know that watch the other videos on the channel, I am a huge car guy, love go-karts. So I was easily able to see how applicable it was to car stuff as well. So after we graduated from UC Irvine, Will continued on with our friend Aldrin and started that senior design project as a small business, startup business, and that's still going today. And they've accomplished some really remarkable things that I'm sure we'll talk about in more detail in a later episode. And then I chose to go on to grad school to pursue my master's degree in mechanical engineering at San Diego State. And I actually did a thesis project related to 3D printing, related to more specifically conductive polymer with 3D printing and producing like a prototype biopotential electrode for like EKG and ECG readings for the medical kind of device industry. And then, today I do 3D printing for the Navy and at an aircraft depot. So I make all kinds of custom tooling, fixtures, masking tools, shop aid tools, you name it. It's a really fun industry and hobby and profession to be in, because it's growing rapidly. So there's always new stuff to be discovered and experimented with, especially in the car industry. So,
yeah, I mean, what a fantastic background, I have to say. I think you've really taken the leap of actually getting into the nitty gritty of 3D printing and how it's applied in industry. And I think that one of the things that I really appreciate about your path that's different than mine is you've had a lot more, how do I say this? You have a lot more of a positive outlook on 3D printing. You've seen a lot of the fantastic ways it can be used. And
yeah.
I think I've definitely, you've pulled me out of some of my more cynical moments for sure, where I'm going like, this stuff's stupid. We shouldn't do it anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's what I always try, because, one thing with the government and the military is, they get very stuck in their ways of old school stuff. I mean, we're still using mostly physical paper documents, and we're just now kind of getting transitioned to digital. And so you have to really convince certain people that new technologies like additive manufacturing and 3D printing can be really beneficial, even though, most of the parts aren't rated to fly on an aircraft, or something like that, but they can still benefit the, repair, overhaul, and just, manufacturing process in many different ways. So, yeah, and I always try and have a, open mind and really push the envelope and say, hey, we can do this,
This is my partner, Laura.
Hi.
All right.
I'm just out here trying to brush my hair.
She's our first guest on the show.
Yeah, welcome. You're our first guest on the show. Oh, your brush broke.
Oh, are you recording right now?
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
No, we're just winging it right now.
We're winging it.
Episode
So.
0.
All right, well, please carry on. I apologize.
As many TV shows, this is pilot episode, right?
This is our pilot. This is the 0. Yeah. This is we're pitching this, baby.
Right. So kind of, we talked about point 1, and we started kind of getting, already transitioned into point 2 on our kind of outline here. Why should you care about our explanation? As I already said, I do a lot with the aerospace industry and, aircraft overhaul and repair and using 3D printing in a very industrial setting. And Will, do you kind of want to talk about why? So I have a lot of good exposure for that side of the additive manufacturing industry. And then I'm also recently really pushing for getting into metallic 3D printing, metallic additive manufacturing, because that is a whole new ball game when it comes to additive. But Will, why don't you kind of, I guess briefly talk about why you should care about your background in 3D printing, because you have a very unique and, very different background from me, but also equally as valuable.
Yeah, so to kind of sum it up, just to not make it too long-winded, but a little different is I've definitely focused on the education and outreach side of 3D printing. A lot of my career has been in creating curriculum around 3D printing. I've focused on making sure that we give access to middle school, high school, university students to the educational spaces and the tools that we use and how to kind of get into the idea of designing, modeling, building it, troubleshooting your builds, those kinds of things.
Right.
So I developed curriculum for UC Irvine, for the Department of Education for Orange County. I'm now currently a full-time teacher for computer science here in Richmond, California. And I'm focusing there on how to create maker spaces that kind of help give students the tools while also creating rigorous kind of curriculum and projects that make them rise to the challenge.
Right.
Also, obviously, a huge part of my background is I helped start a company that Andrew also helped start. We worked on creating a fully recycled 3D printing filament. So our company works, it's called Closed Loop Plastics. It focuses on bridging the gap between waste that is sitting in landfill and the users of plastic that need new feedstocks. So our
Which is
first
such a
product,
huge problem.
It's huge, and it's one of these things that I think we don't think about, the dwindling space of our ability to landfill plastics and the plastic prices increasing. We have this perfect storm of, okay, if we can recycle the plastic, we have a great way to help utilize this very useful material in perpetuity.
Sure.
Like we don't have a lot of, we're running out of oil. It's always going to increase. But if we can recycle the plastic in the same way we treat how we recycle metals as a really valuable resource, then it's much easier to keep using these materials. So that's a big part of our mission. Please check us out at closedloopplastics.com.
Throw that plug in there.
quick plug. Quick shameless plug.
Yeah, it's been a real treat kind of seeing you pursue the journey of a startup business because as anybody who has done a startup business or owns their own business can tell you, it's not easy. You've gone through highs and lows, and we've shared many long conversations over a campfire and what you name it about the struggles and the successes of starting a business. So you have a lot of valuable information to share about that, and I'm sure we can probably talk about that in another episode. But it's cool because you had a lot of great experience with the raw material side of things and understanding. You basically have an unofficial degree in material science for polymers. I'm sure.
Basically.
Because even on our small senior design project, we were recycling some materials. There was so much that I'm sure we just overlooked because we weren't aware of. And over the past, 4 years now, you guys have learned so much since we've graduated and done that senior design project. So, we both have very, we kind of started together and then we were kind of going like this. And then now I feel like with this podcast,
we've got a good way to unite it. Yeah.
Right. And, I guess that was one other thing I didn't really touch on in the beginning. The reason for this, we wanted to start this podcast, obviously because Will and I are so involved in 3D printing in different ways, but also in many similar ways. But, he lived in Long Beach for a while. I'm in San Diego. He recently moved back up to the Bay Area to be closer to his family and everything. So we wanted a fun and productive way to stay in touch and kind of stay involved in each other's lives as much as we can, even though we live, 10 hours apart from now. So I think it'll be a really cool way for us to keep talking and collaborating on different 3D printing, related topics. And now you're just a 50-minute flight away. So,
I was about to make the Southwest. I was like, look, man, Southwest, $45 one way. I'm there.
And maybe one of these days we'll do when either I'm up there or you're down here, we can do an in-person recording.
Are you going to need me to bring my own microphone, or can we both use the blue mic?
We can just share, and talk together. Or we can pass the mic back and forth.
There we go. Perfect.
Yeah, so no, it'll be really fun. We have, like I said, very unique and different backgrounds that we can equally contribute to this podcast. So
absolutely.
Getting to point 3 on our outline. So what the heck is this podcast about? We've already kind of talked about it a little bit, but basically, and Will, you can fill in any spots I miss here, but we want to give the person who's watching this podcast, if you've never heard of 3D printing, we want to start from the very beginning so that we can help give people a foundation in what 3D printing or additive manufacturing is. If you don't hear 3D printing, another common phrase for 3D printing is additive manufacturing because you're building stuff up layer by layer. But so that's where we kind of want to start with the very basics and foundation of 3D printing. And obviously, if you already have a background in it, you're going to know that stuff and maybe you'll still learn a few new things. But as the podcast episodes come out and we get more and more in depth, we'll talk about more detailed and more experienced things as well. So we want to just talk about all things 3D printing related to, the machines themselves, the materials behind them, material science, like the engineering, kind of like R&D behind 3D printing, as well as all the different, countless application areas that 3D printing can apply to, whether it's aerospace, automotive, art, just material science, medical industry is huge also now. So just all things 3D printing and just, making in general. Like the subtitle for this podcast is the podcast for makers, right? So makers can do all the way from woodwork to metalwork to, you name it. But the focus will obviously be 3D printing. So, Will, did I leave anything out as far as...
No, I'm just going to add, I think you did a great job there. And I think that's basically, this is really about the understanding the fundamentals of 3D printing and then building upon those so that we can kind of help everybody. We wanted to create a space where we can kind of accumulate all of the fantastic knowledge from others and from ourselves, that whenever Andrew and I get together, we would get together and sit around this. He has a great fire pit in his backyard, and we'd sit out there and we'd talk about all these things, and we would get questions sometimes from his wife or his in-laws and things like that. And there, lots of people would want to know new little bits, and these questions would cause us to like go, oh yeah, I got to think about why that is or what's going on there. So we really wanted to dig into and kind of record the experiences we had and have had in 3D printing, and also expand upon those. And really kind of learn more from other people and kind of create a central location where that information was stored effectively as well.
Yeah. No, it'll be a great tool all the way for very beginners in 3D printing to, when we get into the later episodes, more advanced topics in 3D printing as well. I'm really excited to talk about like the cutting edge stuff in 3D printing. Like what's the next greatest thing, on the additive manufacturing kind of R&D list. Where are we going with 3D printing? What have we already accomplished? Stuff like that. So I think it'll be a really fun podcast. And then I'm excited to have all sorts of, industry guests. I met a really cool woman at an event I was at the other week who runs a metallic 3D printing company or additive manufacturing company. Will's got several connections at, I believe, Matter Hackers, right? And
correct,
numerous other companies from your experiences starting up closed loop plastics. So it'll be really cool to have other people on to share their experience and their background in the industry and hobby as well. It's, it's a very cool thing because 3D printing, you can either be a hobbyist and strictly do it for hobbies and little knickknacks and, cosplay costumes, or you can do it for your profession, which is thankfully where I'm at. And I'm so thankful I'm able to do that as my full-time job and, and benefit either the medical industry, the aerospace industry, you name it. So lots of cool stuff to talk about. So
absolutely.
Point 4, why listen? Like we've kind of already talked about, we've got very unique backgrounds in 3D printing in different ways. Will obviously, like we said, started up his own business related to 3D printing and the materials behind 3D printing. And then I work in the aerospace industry, and that really is pushing the envelope with additive because, and in aerospace, you can't have a part fail, or at least an important part. So that's kind of like my goal is to like have parts being put on an aircraft, consistently, because as a MRO, so that's where I work as an MRO facility, maintenance, repair, and overhaul. There's a lot of unique applications where a one-off 3D printed part is perfect, but getting the approval for the strength behind it is a whole can of worms. So we have a lot of really unique input from our backgrounds, our day jobs, and what we do on the side as well. Because I like to do a lot of 3D printing related to cars, and Will has his own. Maybe just touch like on aside from closed loop plastics, what do you like to do with 3D printing, like as a hobby?
Yeah. So definitely as a hobbyist, I do a lot of functional prints for around the house.
Yeah.
I also love, so I do a lot of education work. Obviously now my full-time job as an educator. I'm excited to talk about, and maybe we can bring in some interviews as well with people in the education space. Cause I think that as a tool, why I think people should listen to answer the kind of that question is that I think we're going to really help expand people's understanding of what this tool is as 3D printing, additive manufacturing, digital kind of, I was thinking of a term for it before we got on, kind of started recording today, which is like, kind of digitally assisted making, like any kind of thing like that is I think a really great way to give access to people. I think a lot of people think they need so much expertise before they even get involved. And you and I totally know now from experience, that's just not true. You can drop into this thing and you just got to start trying things, and, I really think that it's a fantastic thing that we can kind of create this space where we can accumulate information, allow people to kind of start from the beginning if they need to, but also give people who have already been inside of the industry or in the space maybe some information about new things coming out, what to expect, how to access these things. And so I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, no, it'll be a great pool of knowledge for the beginners and the experienced users in the additive industry. So I think that's pretty much, towards the end of our outline here. We just kind of wanted to, this is episode 0 of the podcast, just kind of wanted to get it going. Basically, we're testing our audio and video recording equipment, and then we're going to test our distribution software that we're using to pump out these episodes. So I think it's been working well so far, and we'll see how this goes. And the last point is kind of how often episodes are going to be coming out. Will, do you want to touch on that?
Sure. So I think we've talked about, Andrew and I have talked about basically probably every other week is how often these episodes are going to come out to start. And if the audience demands more, we'll adjust. If they demand less, then we'll probably still keep talking to you at every other week because we don't care.
We just like doing this just so we can have an excuse to call each other and chit chat. So
if this is honestly just a point in the weeks where we get to talk about 3D printing, that's fine with us. So at least you'll hear from us as an audience every couple weeks.
Yeah. And I think our plan is to do episodes about 45 minutes long when we get into the full content episodes. I actually have no idea how long we're at right now. I don't see.
What about 25 minutes?
25 minutes. So perfect for episode 0, I'd say. So about a half hour. But for the full-time episodes, we're shooting between 45 minutes and an hour, depending on how in depth some of the conversations go, and when we get guests on the show, how in depth they get with their sharing of their experience as well. So
absolutely,
I'm stoked. This is gonna be fun.
I am too, man. This is so far a great experience.
Yeah, so far everyone I've told that we're doing a podcast are like, that's awesome. When you start producing episodes, shoot me the link. I'll be happy to link or watch. And because that's one thing when I commute to work now, I don't listen to music hardly ever anymore. I mostly listen to podcasts, so it's a cool way.
That's same here.
Yeah, so it's a cool way to learn about new stuff, and you have to if you have some time to kill. So I hope these are entertaining for you all, and we're really excited to keep doing this. And so of course, if you guys have any you as viewers or listeners have any input or feedback for us, please let us know. You can shoot us an email. The email for the podcast is UnwindingtheSpool, just as the title of the podcast suggests, at gmail.com. So shoot us any questions or input or feedback you have for us. Or if you're on YouTube, you could leave a comment in the comment section as well. So, Will, you got anything else?
No, I'm just realizing right now we don't really have a sign off. We'll have to, this is something that'll have to, I guess, become,
Yeah, we'll kind of figure it out as we go, right?
As we go,
Yeah. So thank you all so much for watching and or listening. I hope you guys learned a little bit about us and kind of why we're doing this, and I hope you're as excited as we are.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody. See you next time. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Next time.